Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're tackling something you guys specifically requested, the power of positive thinking.
Oh, interesting.
We're going to do a deep dive into this excerpt you sent us from a book called The Power of Positive Thinking: How to Rewire Your Mind for Success.
I've heard of that one.
And even before we cracked it open, I gotta say, that title alone, I was hooked.
Yeah, it kind of grabs you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a question a lot of us have, right? Like, how much can we actually change our lives just by, like, changing our thoughts?
Right. And this excerpt, it doesn't mess around. It dives straight into the science of it all.
Oh, really?
Talking about neuroplasticity, how our brains can actually like rewire themselves based on what we're feeding them.
I like that. Feeding them.
It's got to be more effective than just like trying to think happy thoughts all day.
Right, right. It's not just about, slapping on a happy face.
Exactly.
This is about, like, the nuts and bolts of how our brains work.
Okay, so how does it work?
Well, the excerpt uses this great analogy. Imagine your brain is like a forest path. Right?
Yeah.
Every time you have a negative thought, it's like walking down that same path, wearing it deeper and deeper.
Makes sense.
But when you consciously choose a positive thought, it's like you're blazing a new trail.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. At first, it's going to take more effort. It's going to be a little bumpy. But the more you walk that new trail, the clearer it becomes, the easier it becomes. And eventually, that becomes your go-to path, almost on autopilot.
Okay, so it's like building that positive thinking habit at the neurological level.
Exactly. It's not just wishful thinking. It's actual rewiring happening in your brain.
That's kind of incredible when you think about it like that.
It really is. And, this excerpt doesn't just talk about what positive thinking is, but also what it isn't.
Oh, okay. Important distinction.
Right. It's not about, ignoring problems or pretending everything's perfect.
Like burying your head in the sand.
Exactly. It's about facing those challenges head on, but with a solutions-oriented mindset.
So not putting on those rose-colored glasses and pretending everything's great, but more about approaching those situations with like a proactive can-do attitude.
Exactly. It's recognizing that you have the power to choose how you respond to any given situation.
I like that. So it kind of puts you in the driver's seat a little bit more.
It does. It does.
So less ignoring the flat tire and more like, okay, time to grab the spare and figure this out.
That's a great way to put it. It's about choosing to focus on the solutions rather than just dwelling on the problem.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this ties into like success then, right?
Absolutely.
That idea of seeing opportunities even in the midst of challenges.
That's the key.
But what's the why here? Like, why go through the effort of rewiring your brain for this kind of thinking? What does the excerpt say about, like, the payoff, the benefits?
Well, it lists several.
Yeah.
Some more surprising than others. Of course, there's, less stress, better mental health. Those are kind of the things you might expect.
Right, sure.
But then it goes a little deeper, talking about how this mindset can lead to greater productivity.
Oh, interesting.
Because you're focused on finding solutions, right? And even stronger relationships.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, approaching things with a more positive outlook can really help with communication and conflict resolution.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's about, like, achieving more and building stronger connections, too.
Exactly. It has ripple effects throughout your whole life.
That's huge.
Sure.
But, okay, let's get practical here. How do we actually do this rewiring?
Well, one of the things it really gets into is this idea of gratitude journaling.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
And it kind of breaks down why it's more than just like a feel-good practice.
Right.
It argues that when you consciously focus on what you're grateful for, even like seemingly small things, it physically changes how your brain prioritizes information.
Interesting.
So those positive neural pathways, they get stronger.
Okay.
Which makes it easier to kind of like access those thoughts and feelings again in the future.
So it's like you're building a mental muscle for gratitude,
Exactly.
which then like makes it easier to approach other situations with that same like lens.
Exactly. And it even gives some like really practical advice on how to make this a habit.
Oh, okay, like what?
Like it suggests starting each day by writing down just 3 things you're grateful for.
3 things, okay.
Could be anything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
A sunny morning,
Sure.
a delicious cup of coffee,
Yeah.
a text from a friend.
Right.
The key is to like really savor the feeling of gratitude as you're writing it down.
So it's not enough to just like jot down a list. You have to actually like engage with those feelings of gratitude to really make it stick.
Exactly. It's about shifting your focus.
Okay. That makes sense. But what about when those inevitable like negative thoughts pop up?
Right.
Because they always do,
Right.
right?
Of course, of course.
So how do we rewire our brains to kind of handle those a little more constructively?
Well, the excerpt emphasizes that positive thinking isn't about pretending those negative thoughts don't exist.
Okay.
It's about choosing how we respond to them.
Okay. So how do we do that?
So it suggests actually putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Putting them on trial. Okay.
Yeah. Like, are they based on facts?
Yeah.
Or are they just, like, fear-based assumptions?
So instead of letting a thought like, "Ugh, I'm going to totally fail at this presentation, just like spiral out of control.
Right, right.
You stop and you question it. Like what evidence is there to support that thought?
Exactly.
Or is there a more like balanced, realistic thought?
Exactly. And often when we do that, when we kind of like shine a light on those negative thoughts, they lose their power.
Huh.
We might realize they're based on like past experiences that are no longer relevant or fears that are like highly unlikely to actually come true.
It's like you're disarming that thought bomb before it explodes.
I like that.
Okay, so we've got gratitude to kind of boost the positive. We've got challenging those negative thoughts to kind of keep them in check. What other like rewiring strategies does this excerpt offer?
What also dives into the power of visualization,
Okay, yeah, I've heard about that.
which is a technique that's been used by like athletes and performers for years, right?
Right.
But the excerpt argues that it's not just about like picturing yourself winning a race or nailing an audition.
Okay.
It's about creating a mental blueprint for any kind of success.
So if you want to write a book, for example,
Yeah.
you wouldn't just visualize yourself like holding the finished copy in your hands.
Yeah.
You'd visualize the entire process, the writing, the editing, even like the challenges and how you'd overcome them.
Precisely. Because by vividly imagining yourself navigating that whole journey, the highs and the lows,
Yeah.
you're not only like boosting your confidence,
Okay.
but you're also sending a really powerful message to your subconscious mind.
What?
This goal is achievable, and here's how I'm going to make it happen.
It's one thing to like say, I want to write a book. It's a totally different thing and probably a lot more powerful to actually like visualize yourself working on it every day,
Yes,
overcoming those obstacles and ultimately achieving that goal.
exactly. And this kind of ties into another key strategy from the excerpt, which is the power of surrounding yourself with positivity.
So it's not just about like our internal world. It's also about creating an external environment that supports that positive mindset.
Exactly.
Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it, right? The people we spend time with, the books we read, the podcasts we listen to,
Right.
they all influence our thoughts and beliefs. It's like
Yeah.
you're curating your own little positivity ecosystem,
I like that.
right?
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people who uplift and inspire you, you know?
Mhm.
Seek out information that expands your mind. Create environments that spark joy and creativity.
Right.
All of that feeds back into your mindset.
So it's about being mindful of those inputs, right?
Yes.
Because if we're constantly bombarded with negativity, like, I don't know, from the news or social media, or even just like the people around us,
Right. It's everywhere.
it's got to be that much harder to maintain a positive outlook, let alone like actively try to rewire your brain for success.
Exactly. It takes conscious effort.
This has been so insightful, honestly. I feel like I've gone from having kind of a vague idea about positive thinking to like really understanding the science behind it
I'm glad to hear that.
and the concrete steps we can take to kind of make it a reality. But, you know, even with all the tools and techniques, life happens.
Oh, it does.
There are going to be days when it's hard to stay positive. Days when those like old negative thought patterns they creep back in. How do we deal with that?
Well, the excerpt actually addresses that, and it emphasizes that consistency is key. You know,
Right.
it's like learning any new skill.
Right.
You're not going to be an expert overnight.
Right.
You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have days when you fall back into old habits.
Sure.
But the important thing is to just keep practicing. Each day is a new opportunity to like start fresh and kind of reinforce those positive neural pathways.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Exactly.
And even if we like stumble, we can use those moments as like learning experiences.
Absolutely.
Figure out, okay, what triggered those negative thoughts and how can I like approach it differently next time?
That's the spirit.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Thank you so much for walking us through all of this. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this book excerpt,
Just a glimpse.
but it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
I'm so glad.
So for our listener out there who's already well-versed in, like, the self-development world, who's probably tried, like, gratitude journals and visualizations before,
Right, they've been around.
what's one thing from this excerpt, one, like, new insight or technique that you think could be a game changer for them?
I think the most powerful takeaway from this excerpt is the emphasis on the why behind positive thinking. It's not just about, like, feeling good. It's about rewiring our brains for greater success, however we define that.
Right.
It's about, like, showing up as our best selves, even in the face of challenges.
It's a journey.
It is a journey, and it's worth embarking on.
It really is. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it. Share your biggest takeaways on social media. Or, even better, send this episode to a friend who you think might find it helpful. Until next time, keep those minds curious.